comedian, podcaster, and author Judy Gold coming to Chicago November 8th through the 10th at Venus Cabaret for Big Gay Cabaret. Judy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to go to Venus Cabaret.
Let's talk a little bit about your time here in Chicago and some of your favorite memories about our city.
Oh my God. I remember, okay. So the first time I came to Chicago was in the late 80s, and I came there to perform with Margaret Smith. I don't know if you remember her. She was a brilliant comedian. She's since retired from comedy, but she was on Letterman multiple times. And she introduced me to Chicago. She was from Chicago. And the first time I performed there was in a lesbian bar. And it was life-changing because I have a memory of, and there were many butch lesbians at this bar. And it was the first time I was actually performing in a gay place with a gay women audience. And I remember saying to Margaret, it was such a profound moment. It was the late 80s. I'm like, why do they have to be so butchy? And why do they dress like that? Why can't they just look more feminine? And she said to me, as this young gay in her 20s, I was about 26, maybe 27, she said, those women make your life easier because they don't hide who they are. When they walk down the street, everyone knows what's up. And you should bow to them. And because they're fearless and they're letting people know that we exist. And from that point on, she was so right. And it changed everything for me. And the lesbians in Chicago were just incredible. And I love Chicago as a city. I have family there. My mother's cousins lived there, and my mother loved the city because of the fact that it was a beach and a city. And the food, the music, the comedy, the history, the people. It's a great town. It really is. And look how many people are moving there. Everyone is graduating college and moving to Chicago. It's such an incredible place. So, I have a lot of great memories performing in all different venues in Chicago. And it's a bright spot in the United States of America.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I want to ask you just based off your first answer. The amount of lesbian bars in the Chicagoland area has really diminished, and it's it's kind of sad to see. And it's always I think obviously networking, socializing, it's different now these days. People move, people maybe not see the cultural importance of having those safe spaces for people to gather. As far as like other cities you traveled to, was Chicago kind of one of those places that you remembered having like a strong community?
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, there are some places I went to and I was like, what? There's gay people here, And then Chicago, because it's urban and it's also has this Midwestern value system, is a very special place. I mean, you go to New York, it's very urban and very not Midwestern value. Yeah. So there's this politeness. And I remember when I first started coming there, I was like, I'm kidding. And they're like, oh, okay. So they had to kind of get used to me. But the gay spaces, the fact that there are so few lesbian bars now, and as we were talking, like in the beginning, there's so few butch lesbians. So many people are not. I celebrate the butch lesbian. Yeah. Being a woman and being very butch, I think that is so beautiful. And these spaces that are not there anymore. It's really depressing. It really is very depressing because we need those spaces.
Well, 100%. You also bring up a good point, especially, it happens in the gay community, just, across that where people maybe make assumptions or say that's them, that's not me. And just that statement, I think, is just is so profound. Yeah, it
So
and
true.
yeah,
I don't think a lot of young gays know the history. And that is really, really sad because then it repeats itself. We were not a united community, the gays and lesbians, really until the AIDS crisis.
yeah,
And that's when we all came together and we saw what was happening to these gay men who were with their partners for dozens, decades, dozens of years, if not decades, um, and yet they would lose everything when their partner died because there was nothing there were no laws that protected us, and it was about human dignity and protection. It wasn't about anything religious. And I tell a story on stage now about in the 80s when I went to Amsterdam with my ex on a business trip, and how we were staying at a hotel and I couldn't walk into the hotel with her. I couldn't be seen with her. Meanwhile, there was a colleague there with her husband, and they were invited together to all of the events. But I had to fake I didn't even know who she was. I mean, we would be in the lobby together. I'd say, "Hi, are you from America?" And she'd be like, "Get away from me." But that's how it was. We
yeah,
hid. And I just read an article today about how it's happening in Russia, that they felt they had all these safe spaces, and those safe spaces are being shut down, and people have to go back in the closet. And it's happening in this country. Pay attention.
yeah.
Pay attention.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that people take for granted now that they don't realize the struggles. And it wasn't that long ago that all these
Oh
things
no.
happened. And
Yesterday.
you
Yeah.
could, at a turn of a dime, you can see those things going back or creeping back. And I think that, if unfortunately, if something like that were to happen, that would be the waking up point. But that's going to be too
Right.
late for too many people. So make sure you get out there
That's
and vote.
why.
I don't want to turn it into
Yeah.
a voting thing, but yeah, make sure you get there and vote.
No, that's your
It's
First
important. Yeah,
Amendment. That's the
yeah,
only way to get your voice heard is to
yeah,
vote.
yeah,
And vote in down ballot. That's how you get your voice heard,
yeah,
But it's also like, I know we're going to talk about the film Outstanding,
yeah,
uh, which was on Netflix. And I think that should be a must watch for every young gay and straight. I mean, everyone should watch that film. And you will learn so much because stand-up comedy, I wrote a book called Yes, I Can Say That When They Come for the Comedians, We're All in Trouble. It's all about free speech from the perspective of a comedian. And stand-up comedy is such an extension of our First Amendment rights that we can say whatever we want. We can criticize the establishment. We're truth tellers. And we have broken down so many barriers. If as I said, I'm 61, I'm going to be 62 in November. And the amount of kids that come up to me and say, I used to watch you in my basement. I used to, hide and go watch. And I was like, who's this big, loud lesbian talking about her family and her kids? And, you don't realize what an impact that has. But representation is everything. And we can't hide, and we have to honor those who came before us and remember what it was like, or at least understand what it was like, or know what it was like. Make
yeah.
yourself smarter.
Yeah, I mean, especially like for myself, just you mentioning that this was a time before Will and Grace and Ellen and Glee and all these types of shows, and you really waited for a late, for an Arsenio Hall or for a Joan River, someone to have a LGBTQ comedian or a performer, and you wanted to watch them just to see what they would say, just so that you would feel seen, just so that you weren't alone.
Also,
Yeah.
you'd be watching, and so many times you didn't know the person was gay, and they would say something gay, and you're sitting there with their parents. So many people tell me they would watch a comedian with their parents who they knew was gay, and they'd watch their parents' reaction. And if their parents laughed, they knew that they were going to be okay, that they were going to be able to come out to them, and it wasn't going to be, this get out of the house situation.
Yeah.
And it is a barometer, because when we laugh together, we are a unit. We're all joined together and laughing at the same thing. Like, you go to a comedy club, the person next to you could be someone you hate on paper. But when you laugh together, it really brings people together. But that, so it is a salve, but it's also a weapon. And that's what I love about this film. It shows how we used it as a weapon to change people's minds.
Yeah. And if we don't share our history, it's going to get lost. So we got to make sure that, the youth, people who maybe are, who are allies, are watching the film and get to understand some of these people that,
Right.
we praise and we love, and our icons, whether in comedy or film or music.
Right. Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about the cabaret show. Obviously, jokes. You played piano since you were a kid. Tell us a little bit about combining all those stories and creating the show for us.
Well, I did play piano. I still play piano. I'm not playing piano in my show. But it is a big part of my life. I try to practice. It just does something to my head, and I have better sets at night when I practice the piano. But the show, I love working in cabarets so much because they're intimate. People tend to get more dressed up. People tend to pay attention. People always ask me, oh, what's the difference between performing in a theater or in a comedy club? And I feel like in a comedy club, you have to get their attention. You have to get their attention. In a theater or a cabaret, you have to keep their attention because they come ready to listen. And it's an intimacy in there. People are culturally sophisticated, people who go to cabarets. And it is the oldest, that's where comedians started,
Yeah.
And you think about Cabaret, the film, as we were saying, it was the comedians who got up in these cabarets and talked about what was going on in Berlin at the time, and really told the truth. And then they were shut down because satire weakens propaganda. And that's why it's important to let art tell a story. So I talk about so much stuff. I'm not the most docile person in the world, but I love the art of stand-up and of
Yeah.
truth telling. So and I love Chicago, and I love Chicago audiences, and the gays, the best audience there is.
They're here for you. I do want to ask a serious question, because you talked about coming here in '88 to perform at a lesbian bar, but I don't believe you were publicly out until you became a parent
Yes.
in '96. What was that like period of time for you, especially kind
Oh
of
God.
moving on up in the straight clubs?
Yeah, I had already made it. I was working in the straight clubs. I wanted to be a comedian who happened to be a lesbian, and all the comics, except for Bob Smith, who was my best friend, who was part of the Funny Gay Males, and he was the first out stand up on the Tonight Show. Suzanne Westenhofer was out. Robin Tyler was the first, which is, you'll learn so much about her in this film. Kudos to Paige Hurwitz, who made this film and has been an ally to getting these stories. She's a comic as well, but just to getting these stories out there. But yeah, I was working in the straight clubs, and I would talk about my gay friends, and everyone knew in my personal life, but it was a risk. It was a
Yeah.
really big risk. So kudos to all those who came out before me, like Leah. But in '96, my son Henry was born, and I thought to myself, every comic talks about their family. Why I should be able to talk about mine. And it, I came out because of my son, but it was precisely because of him that it made it easier to come out, because people were more apt to listen and respond to these jokes that they could relate to about being a parent.
Yeah.
And people would forget, oh, right, this is a gay family. Their kids are just like ours. And the responses I got afterwards from people who were like, I didn't understand why gay people wanted to get married, and I get it. Just the fact that humor is the most palatable way to sort of trick you in a way to
Yeah.
change your opinion, to, you can really give someone more compassion, you know, every comic, a disabled comic, a person of color, women, indigenous, like everyone, when they make you laugh, you like them. And
Yeah.
next time you meet a person who's like that, you can relate to them better.
Well, I think people, fear what they don't know. And that's kind of a very,
Absolutely.
to break down, they're like, oh, they're not as different as I imagine them in my head. Or maybe you live in
Right.
a part of the country where you've never met somebody before. And yeah.
Right. And that's why when people came out, especially, AIDS made men come out. I mean, they couldn't hide anymore, And when people came out and people realized, oh, my brother, my uncle, my male person, my teacher, my doctor, they're around. There's so many of us, and
Yeah.
there's nothing to be ashamed of. You're born perfectly, just the way you are, and that is the message that needs to go out. There's too many kids harming themselves because of bullying, and that is just willful ignorance.
100%. And I think that, the more representation, the more allies that people
Right.
have. And even just saying, I may not be part of the community, but this is a great film, or kudos for you for watching it, or not saying something negative. Those things impact
Right.
the youth. And, I can remember positive and negative things I heard growing up, and those stick with you. Like, just even like a comment that you might hear from an adult or a teacher or a family member could really have a lasting impact,
Oh,
positive or negative.
and I think about my sons. They're both straight. One of them plays college basketball, and the crap that he has listened to, and the words he's heard people use, and he's schooled people on this in a really kind way. And I've taught them, don't let it go. Just confront it and be direct and kind, and people will respond in kind, hopefully.
And one of your sons had a very iconic moment with Madonna when you were working on the.
Oh yes, my Henry, my firstborn, my eldest. When I worked at the Rosie O'Donnell show for 2 years, the first 2 seasons, and when Madonna had just had Lourdes, and they had the same due date, but Henry's a little early, and so she was making her first TV appearance after giving birth, and everyone thought she was bringing the baby, but she wasn't. So one of the producers said, can we use Henry as a prop baby? And I talked to my ex, and we said, okay, sure. And she brought Henry out, and everyone thought it was Lourdes, and the place is going crazy. There's a whole story of even getting him there. This is pre 9/11. There were paparazzi in the friggin' elevator at 30 Rock. Like, it was ridiculous. And, Madonna comes out with this baby, and, Rosie's like, oh, the baby's so cute, but it's not your baby. And she's like, I know, but everyone thought. And then I picked up the baby from Madonna. And that is when all of my mother's friends called her and said, Judith had a baby? And I was like, Ma, you don't fucking tell people? Like, what is wrong with you? And so, yeah, because I did not give birth to Henry. He's not my bio son. Ben is. So no one's ever saw me pregnant, so they were all confused. But that it was on the cover of the New York Post, and I have so much memorabilia from that. It was hilarious, really. And they had a big, the New York Post with their they have the best headlines, and it said, "Oh, Henry," and there was a picture of Henry.
And there used to be a candy bar called Oh Henry too. So
that's right. That's why.
And that's the thing too that I love about Madonna and Rosie O'Donnell. I think the first time I saw them together was on Arsenio Hall, where they did a joint interview. Probably one of the best interviews I've ever seen in my entire life. But their friendship, and then getting to see Madonna on Rosie's show, and just the friendship that they had together, Madonna's allyship. Talk a little bit about what it was like. I know you've had a lot of wonderful guests on Rosie O'Donnell, but what was that experience like having Madonna in the building?
Okay, well, you're a gay man, so you are freaking out about Madonna. Yeah. I'm telling you, I never freaked out really about anyone. The ones I freaked out about when Barbara came, that I really freaked out. I cried. I was just like, because, for me, here's this dream of Rosie's. And it was like, I'm in my room as a little girl, just wanting to be Barbara, like, you know, she was, and Carole King, she had a profound effect on me. I mean, it was crazy when, you know, I remember Madeleine Albright came up, like there were some people I was like, oh my God, I can't believe these people are here. I mean, Madonna was such a New York fixture, so it wasn't that huge.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was I loved my 2 seasons there at the show. It was she changed the whole way daytime TV. It was, and it was, you know what was great about that show? Is that there were so many gay, LGB, we didn't have T or Q or anything, but there were so many LGB people working on that show and allies. And I used to say to John McDaniels, if these people knew that this is their favorite show, this is a phenomenon, it's all a bunch of queer kids and theater kids putting on a show for you. You know, and I used to just be, you know, it was the late 90s, and I used to just think, wow, if they only knew.
If they only knew. I mean, what I remember about the show was Madonna, Tom Cruise on the show, but also how much theater we got to see as far as performances. And, you know,
oh my God, what she
yeah.
did for New York Theater. And I also want to say kudos to Arsenio Hall, who was such an ally. I did his show 3 times, did stand up. Leah did his show. He is a class act and a friend to our community. But Rosie changed the face of Broadway and brought it to everyone. And, you know, good for her, because it really is such an incredible, Broadway's just amazing, amazing. I watch the Tony, I mean, I go to shows all the time. And then you watch the Tony Awards, you're like, how did they do this? Like, you just can't believe it. So
Another funny thing, you just came back from the gym. You know, kudos to you. I still got to go today, so I'll probably go later on today.
have fun.
But you do a funny bit about Peloton.
Yeah, because you know what? I get on the Peloton and I'm really excited to work out. And then I just feel fucking old, you know? It's just like, you know, they're all like, and it's gay, they're all foreign, they're all really hot. What, you know, oh, I was at DePaul the other day and I was having trouble. I can't even breathe, and you're having a conversation with me. And then the whole competitive thing where you can follow everyone who's riding and see how fucking slow and miserable you are. It's just awful. It's just awful. They need it for older people where they're just like, all right, just try to pedal. Take a break right now. Okay. Yeah. Pedal, go get a snack, and then come back and we'll try again. You know, it's a lot of pressure.
And you know what else they should do? Just what you mentioned that right now, they should do like different workouts based on like, all right, you have a baby, the baby's napping, you got 20 minutes, let's hurry up and do this.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Also, wait, this is one thing that, Rudy, that pisses me off because I'm old, is that, you know, I go on for the music. So I'll go on like a classic rock thing or something like that, or a disco, and I'm like, this is a remake. This is not the original. You're 30 years old and you don't know what classic rock is, okay? And you don't know what 70s pop is. No, okay? They always have like a couple of other, and I'm like, no, sorry. So I think I need to curate the music.
You know what's so funny is I do the exact same thing, because sometimes I'll go in for an 80s or a 90s ride. That's like, those are my decades. And then they'll play like a song from like 91. And I was like, this is an 80s. I remember being alive at that point. That is not from that decade. And I'll get angry. And then I'll pedal part faster because I'm angry.
It's annoying.
Maybe that's what they want you to do. Maybe they're trying to get those emotions out of you, you know?
Pressure up. Yeah.
Well, Judy, I could talk to you for like 4.5 hours and not have enough. I just want to say that.
Oh, Rudy, thank you.
That is wonderful. Well, we're going to welcome you to Chicago, November 8th through the 10th at Venus Cabaret. BigGayCabaret.com for those tickets. Go ahead and check her out. Show on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We will see you in Chicago very, very soon.
I can't wait.
Thanks
for having me.
Of course. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
You too. Bye-bye.